Okay, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Can everyone see me okay? All right, we wanted to go ahead and introduce ourselves first. Hello, thank you everyone for coming to Community Comments. We are 3 members of the current board. My name is Joe Lind, and I work at Wheatley College. I'm an ASL instructor, one of the current board members.
Hello, my name is Jeanette Castro, and I work at Madera Community College as an ASL instructor. And I am also one of the board members here today.
Hi, my name is Patty. Keep growing. And I am also a board member. I am from Salinas, and I am a high school teacher at Salinas High School. All right, we have a few rules before we start. The first one being, if any of you plan to come to community comments, please line up to my right, and you will stand at this blue X that is right in front of me to share your community comment. You will line up to my right. And also, when you come up and present or share your comment, you have a max of 3 minutes. We will let you know when your time is up, and we will move on to the next person. If you would like to get back in line, you are free to do so, but we are going to have each comment be 3 minutes. Okay. Also, remember that the comment needs to be respectful. Of course, you may be sharing frustrations, but we can also do that respectfully and share that feedback about how the organization or agency can improve their services. And lastly, if you have a complaint about a specific person, a board member, staff member, DHHSC also does have a grievance form that you can submit if it is about a specific person. To just stand here and talk about a specific person wouldn't be beneficial, but it would be more productive to fill out the form. Of course, if you have a general comment, please go ahead and share that here. But if it's about a specific person, it would be best to fill out a grievance form. Does anybody have any other questions? Anything else I need to add? All right, I'm going to turn the floor over to our new executive director, Viriana.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for coming. This is my first community comments, so please be patient with me. This is all new, but I will definitely try my best. I'd like to share with you some of the updates for DHHSC and what has been happening here. Over the years, we have had a program called the YES program, Youth and Employment Services. However, over the last while, it has not been very effective. So we will put that program on hold, if you will, and we are going to brainstorm and come up with ideas as to how we can keep our youth in the community involved, hoping to develop new things moving forward. There's always room for improvement. That brainstorming and that focus will be leadership, community involvement, skill development, and opportunity. For our young people today, it appears that they really have not been involved to a great extent, and we want to draw in that youth involvement. They are our future leaders, and they are the people that someday may be running the agency, so we want to connect with our young people and invest in them. brainstorm how it is that we can develop those things. As an example, recently we had a new program developed in June, a youth teen group, hard of hearing teen group. And that program seems to be growing and doing well. However, we want to focus on those who are not hard of hearing, maybe those that use strictly American Sign Language. The hard of hearing youth seem to be growing and developing, but maybe those of color, Latino, Black, they are not involved, and we want to have a way to connect with those youth as well. Another update as it relates to what we are doing as we move forward, and as the new executive director, my goal is to provide cross-training for all staff. What that means is we have a number of staff that have their areas of expertise, but when we cross-train, that means they become familiar and knowledgeable in others' areas of expertise so that this operation can move forward smoothly. If we have only one person familiar with immigration court and that person is not here, we have an issue. So we want to make sure we are cross-trained and we have several employees trained in various areas. So that is something we're looking forward to as we move forward. Another goal that I have for DHHSC is our commitment to diversity. We want to ensure that we are more diverse and inclusive. During Mexican Heritage Month, we want to celebrate that. If we have a speaker come that represents that Mexican heritage, that Latino group, or the African American, for example, on Juneteenth, various groups and their heritage celebrations, we want to include speakers and presenters from those various groups. We want their cultures represented. We want their stories shared throughout the community. We want greater representation from the outside. We want to bring in outside community speakers to DHHSC that can represent those diverse cultures. In regards to the youth as we move forward, we also want to develop greater opportunities for volunteerism. We want to encourage leadership in our young people. Many of our young people are in high schools, and there is not much opportunity for them to become leaders. And we want to take advantage of the time that we have now, mentor them, teach them, encourage them to lead. And we can do that, we believe, through volunteerism and working with those youth to develop their leadership abilities. And that is the update I wanted to share with you for now. With that, I am turning the floor over to you as the community to share your thoughts, your concerns. Feel free to come up and share. Thank you so much. One moment. Hello, my name is Tim Spires. Many of you know who I am. I previously worked for Sorensen and was heavily involved with the community and have met with many of you. Unfortunately, half of those communities members never come. I do want to let you know that what I share is raw. This community is your community. It does not belong to the staff. I do feel the board should represent the community. I have served on the board myself several times in the past, from about 1998 when it was VACC and later as it became DHHSC. I am curious as to what has happened to the bylaws. There seems to be many violations of those bylaws. The board meets, I think, has met twice. How is it that you can know the community concerns without more frequent meetings? Additionally, it seems that the meetings continue to be presented on Zoom. COVID is over. We need to have in-person meetings. The Zoom meetings need to stop. I also feel that the process for bringing in the new executive director was done poorly. And when I look at the numbers of board members, there was only 3 or 4. There were several people added. And then once the interview went forward and we selected a person, they were gone. And I don't believe that followed the bylaws. Like I said, there are new people that were brought in for the hiring of the new director, and then people left. That doesn't seem right to me. In terms of the bylaws, they indicate that you have to attend at least 2 meetings before one becomes a member of the board. That particular requirement seems to have been violated. You also must serve for a year before you can be moved to an official position such as secretary or vice president. That has not been adhered to. And I'm also wondering where the 5149 balance is. That doesn't seem to be happening either. The president did indicate, I am resigning just a few days before the other individual was hired. Again, I don't feel good about that. Has the board approved the new position of the administrative assistant? I didn't see any mention about that. There's been movement and change that I'm uncomfortable with. As a board, you have to be in charge. It is not the executive director that's in charge or the staff that is in charge, and I think that was the problem I saw when I moved here back in the late 90s, 97, 98. It seemed to be the opposite. The executive director was running the agency, and that is not how it is supposed to be. One moment. Okay, time is.
Okay. I am one of the new members of the board, as of 6 months ago. And what happened was, so DHHSC, in order to operate, we must have a minimum of 4 board members, or DHHSC cannot function, right?
And that is correct, as confirmed by Juliana.
Yes, so without a minimum of 4 board members, the agency cannot run. And when the person planned to leave the board, that would have left it with 3 members, which means that DHHSC, again, could not run, which could not happen. So we had to have at least 4 board members. We had emergency bringing in the 4th member, and then we ended up having 7. There were multiple people who wanted to join at the same time. So we were able to bring them on board. The president did then step down, which meant that we do have a president, we have a new president, and the 5149% that we we did not have enough deaf people who had applied to join the board. If it was 51-49 and we did not welcome other people, then the board would not be able to function. So that was an emergency for the board in order to have them continue to operate. And we are bringing on in new board members as well, and we would love for more people to join if anybody here is interested. But again, 2 people resigned, and that was another individual who had been on the board for 3 or 4 years, which then if they resigned without additional board members, we would only have had 2 board members, which then we were able to have other board members join. We did not have anybody who had been serving for over a year who could fill these positions. So we had multiple roles to fill: president, vice president, secretary, treasurer. And so we made do with the people that we had, and we were able to bring in other people on an emergency basis. So we had to react immediately to be able to have enough people on the board so that DHHSC could continue to run. If you are interested in joining, please let us know. We definitely are always welcoming more people. Trying to think of what else you had mentioned. Zoom, you mentioned board meetings on Zoom. Because our board members are not all in Fresno. We have some in Visalia, some in Salinas, and not everybody is able to gather in Fresno on a Tuesday night. Of course, we would need more members who are local, who would be able to make it to a Tuesday evening meeting. If we only have if we have somebody else from Salinas who is able to join, or someone else from Visalia who is able to join, right, how would we be able to include them if they're not able to make that drive on a Tuesday evening, because we do not compensate for their travel. And again, it's a 6 to 8 on a weeknight. And so that's the reason we have Zoom for now and continue to operate via Zoom. There is a lot of board members who have also been serving for less than 1 year. We have 2 currently now who have been serving over a year, and the other 6 have been serving for less than 6 months. So we are trying our best to function the best that we can. And also what's most important though is that DHHSC is able to continue to operate because of the board. Without the functioning board, we are not able to continue to run operations for DHHSC per bylaws.
And I just want to clarify, you indicated that they would fold, or DHHSC could not be operational, but I'm asking, the fact that you only had 2 meetings in the last year is probably part of the reason that we have that. If you have more frequent meetings, then I think we would draw more. We would be able to provide those people from the community. There is no outreach or contact with the community.
I wanted to respond to clarify for what Tim's comment. I served on the board for 6 years here, and I was president for 2 terms. Hi, Patty. We were served on the board together. And there were some bylaws that were changed during our time, and we did do our best to clean things up. And the bylaws did indicate that our meeting should be 4 times a year. If we have board members that are inconsistently showing up or unable to meet every month, then they would be not allowed to continue to serve. So we changed that now that they're required to attend 2 out of the 4 meetings. Right, because there should not be a reason that they cannot attend at least 2. But like he said too, we're having an issue recruiting board members. We have recruited multiple times and brought this up. We talked through PR for the benefit of the board. Right, what is the benefits of being on the board? And we talked about, discounts and different perks of serving on the board to get additional participation. but we had to wait, right? The bylaws, I believe, said it was 6 months to a year, which that they have to wait if they had previously served, which means that you could have 2 consecutive terms, take a break, and then apply again to be on the board. The Zoom meetings, like were mentioned, right, were just another possibility, again, to open that up to people that are not in Fresno, to be able to, those who are not able to physically be in person. Zoom is a great way too, for board members who are out of town and or other community members who are not local to be able to view the board meeting. We would like to encourage them to come, but like, it was mentioned too, takes time to come in person. We understand that the pandemic is over. Like Tim mentioned, the pandemic is over and people want things to resume back to normal, but Zoom allows us to connect to the community still.
And Patty's indicating it is a 3-hour drive to come here from our location.
Right, and we have new members that are joining too, and there is a training. Mark Apodaca came and did a training for the parliamentary procedures for our board members. And so I would suggest, though, if we were able to have a vlog of the new board members so that everyone can see who they are, and then those who are able to make a commitment to serve on the board for their term, right? Because how else are we able to continue to improve? If we only have board members who are not staying for their term, we should have those who are able to make that commitment, that long-term commitment, to be able to serve. I have stayed, Patty has stayed, and I think that's important that we're able to make and fulfill that commitment.
And Joe was checking to see if there was another comment that was not addressed. Yeah, I agree with you in terms of having Zoom for people who are apart, having them be able to join via Zoom, but I still think our meetings need to be available in person. Oh, and Tim's also addressing the idea of the way that the executive director was hired.
Maybe we could do like 2 in person, 2 on Zoom, just to be able to allow that opportunity for people to be in person. Tim had also brought up
1 minute.
one moment for the interpretation. Tim had also mentioned about a poor process for hiring an executive director. We value the experience that Michelle had, and that Michelle would have the time to train a new executive director. We were on a time constraint. The process started, I believe, the end of March when Michelle submitted her notice, and then we had until May to have somebody in place so they could be trained under Michelle's leadership before Michelle left. We didn't want to put somebody in and have them, quote unquote, put in the dark and not know what to do without that guidance from Michelle before Michelle left. So we needed to be able to have somebody who could be mentored by Michelle before Michelle left in June. We did have the hiring process. The job notice and application was sent out, disseminated, and we needed the board to be able to follow those hiring procedures, which we did, which I can't go into much depth about the hiring process because of confidentiality, but we did follow all of the procedures to find the best candidate for the new executive director. If you would disagree with who was chosen, everybody has their right to have concerns and the right to their own opinion. And if you feel that, it will never be that everybody is happy with who is chosen. But the process was done in a very short period of time, and it was done correctly and fairly. We needed to hire somebody who could be mentored by Michelle before Michelle left in June. Hopefully that answers your question. Okay. Who else would like to make a comment?
Hello. I'm Christopher. I've lived here for a number of years. I don't hang out a lot with the deaf community. I did work for the U.S. Postal Service for a number of years. My point here is in addressing the bylaws. They are critical to the foundation of the operation of the board and the organization here. At the post office, I served as a representative for the American Postal Workers Union. And that dealt with contracts as union employees with the post office. And we were tasked with making revisions, modifications to the bylaws as it relates to membership and meetings and all of that. And I was heavily involved at the national level. In Washington, D.C., I was one of 13 people, the only deaf person. And when I see the way it functioned between the union employees, the post office, and the community, the structure is just like it is here. It is the board that should run the organization. You indicated there were 4 employees, and we had the 5149 requirement. And I don't know if the makeup is right. We currently have 4 hearing, 4 deaf. There's a little confusion. Okay, so we are right now at 4 and 4, which means one of the hearing members must leave in order to keep that 5149 principle. So pulling someone in at the last minute, I understand if there is an emergency need, and if that is in the bylaws, then we have the ability to pull in somebody at the last minute to meet the emergency need, but that must be posted in the bylaws. And what we see in the community is a lessening of attendance, if you will. And, excuse me just one moment. Yeah, and Steve Longo was indicating he worked on the revision of the bylaws, but now as new board members, I'm not sure what they are aware of in terms of the bylaws and what revisions need to be made. But that improvement needs to take place immediately so that as a board, you can truly be in charge of the executive director and the DHHSC organization. When I look at other organizations, they strictly adhere to the bylaws, to the contract. And the union has won time and time again. Our community has the opportunity to win, but we don't have the voice. And so you see the dwindling of the community. I'm an old man, I'm telling you, I'm an old man. I may look young, but I'm an old man. And I am disappointed with the lack of young leaders. I don't see them involved with DHHSC, and I think it's tragic. Thank you. Technical challenges.
Okay, yes, I'm Steve, and I wanted to clarify off Christopher's comment. I think that's very important and very foundational. I agree with what he said, and I think that it's important that the board has 3-year terms, and you can serve 2 consecutive terms. Patty's term is almost complete.
It ends this month.
Yes, so we will be meeting the 5149 requirement And as you guys can see, that 51%, we will be meeting that. And when a deaf person leaves, that messes up the percentages, and so we must wait for that person to leave until we're able to find another deaf person to replace them to be able to meet the 5149. And like we had just said too, the recruitment, right, we're talking about the benefits of serving on the board and also being able to be a part of the community, this great community. I have been here 6 times. It was once, the amount of attendance per year varies. Sometimes there are larger attendances if the food is provided at an event, right?
Yes, food draws people.
Yes, usually when there's food, if it's advertised and, you know, food is on the flyer, if we have a presenter, we're talking about, you know, and also just board recruitment and all of that. That is also a great way to have the community's attention and to discuss board recruitment, the future, what is possible at DHHSC, and to be able to share that in the community so that the community can become more enthusiastic with what the agency is doing. Right, in terms of recruiting board members, the more the merrier. And right, historically, the sister agencies such as, you know, the Bay Area, Sacramento, San Diego, they have also had issues recruiting as well, historically. And especially after the pandemic, it's been even more of a challenge to get people to come back face to face, like Tim had mentioned earlier too, because we want to be able to provide those incentives to have people join the agency as well as being able to attend in person. One other thing I wanted to add is that we do have 2 deaf members who resigned last month. And so our president did resign, and then also another board member resigned. That was 2 deaf people, which is what affected the percentages, which left us with 4 hearing members and 4 deaf members. I understand that Tim is frustrated with that, and at the same time, we recruited additional members last month, again on an emergency basis, to be able to meet those quotas, the 40, 51, 49. And we do have a hearing member who will be resigning, right? Patty mentioned that her term is up and she will no longer be serving on the board at the end of this month, which then we will meet us back at the quota of 5149. And Steve Longo was saying, right, if we wanted to change the percentages, sorry, not the community can't see you.
In terms of bylaws, they clearly state if we have 51% and a deaf person wants to leave, and that will create a situation where we no longer have 51%, then the deaf member must remain until we are able to change that statistic. And so I do think that it's very important to adhere to that specific procedure.
I agree. I 100% agree with you. And like we said, they received their letters of resignation, and there was no changing. Right? It was for personal reasons as well. I'm not sure exactly why they left, but it was sudden. And the meeting, I believe we had a board meeting in May, and our next one is in September. So we lost 2 board members within the same month, and they'll come back up.
And as I mentioned, the first time I was standing here, I know you indicated things were unexpected, but the answer is employment. Her husband got a job, so that was planned. So she resigned 3 days, just a few days before. So I see that as planned, and I see that as a conflict of interest. Additionally, you know, if there is a new person that is put into an administrative position, I'm not shooting that individual. I'm just saying that this was not approved by the board, and you don't just blindly move forward without the proper protocols and without the approvals. If you are indicating that the board has to make modifications or what not, what you need to do is perhaps look for a temporary individual to see how that goes at will. And if it doesn't go well, then that's fine. And once the board is set, then you can start looking for the right long-term individual.
Okay, in response to that comment, the administrative assistant, that decision to have that position had nothing to do with the board. It was an internal staff decision. And Shane, who works now as the employment education for EDD as the employment specialist, we respect their privacy and their confidentiality in terms of how that position, how they were hired.
One moment. Justin? Hello, everyone. My name is Justin Gaines, and I served on the board previously with Tim. When I was 18, there were leadership workshops that I was a part of and involved with. There were several opportunities, and that is how I became involved with Hands on Hands, which was a group we ran from 2014 to 2017 before it folded. I do believe we need more workshops that are focused on leadership, and perhaps we can provide those opportunities to be able to further develop our youth leadership in this community. I believe leading workshops are key. I did leave to attend the Helen Keller National Center for the Deaf for training. And then when I returned, I saw that workshops were no longer happening. So I would encourage you to consider hosting workshops again to encourage motivation, perhaps leading to additional organizations and growth and involvement. I think workshops are key. As it relates specifically to Very, I'm sorry, at the last minute you were bringing someone in without board approval. Let me clarify for you a little bit more about the bylaws. Robert's Rules of Order are standard within hearing organizations, and deaf and hard of hearing organizations are under that. There are various organization clubs, for-profit, non-profit, but all have to follow that same system. And the revision of the bylaws that happen within DHHSC require that the board knows what is going on with the staff. The board cannot be oblivious to the ongoings of staff and hiring. So there is a procedural process that can happen as a result of that if a complaint is filed. And an individual may only last a year or two as a result of that, and that doesn't look good for the community. As it relates to what Gary said, saying that is internal, we can bring in our own staffing. But my question is, was that job posted? I did not see that. By the bylaws, positions must be posted. A position being open and then staffing that position without posting that job announcement is not correct. There were no interviews. That's my point.
Yeah, I would share.
I wanted to clarify. Sorry, can we move over a little bit? Thank you. My name is Jessie. This is my name sign. And I wanted to clarify about the hiring of that position. We always check with our HR company, and we did check in with our HR company. We always make sure we ask appropriate questions, see what appropriate procedures are to see what we need to do in order to follow. And we were informed that the executive director does have the right to open and close positions within any agency without having to check with the board about everyday agency operations. The board oversees the executive director, and the executive director oversees all of the staff positions. We are legally allowed to open a position in-house, and if we see that there is a position that we feel we are able to staff with current staff members, legally we are allowed to open that for in-house employees either. We always make sure that we are following all of the appropriate legalities of this, and right, we want to make sure that we are also following the law for all of this. You can go ahead and research HR laws and double check that for us.
I'm sorry too again. But now, Jesse, with your comment, how is it that at the administrative level, they are unaware of how to deal with sick leave, PTO, paid time off? I don't want to mention names, but I have heard from others. How is it that those requests are dealt with? So my advice is from here forward, don't ask. Just disappear. You don't need to let people know that I'm going to use paid time off or be sick, because of how the administrative level is handling things, which was very poor from what I heard. I'm sorry. And for you to say that HR has the policies, I'm saying that is a third-party organization, and it appears to me, no offense, that they are not adequately knowledgeable.
Hi, Steve again. Wanted to clarify what Tim just commented on. The board must know if there are any changes within the structure of DHHSC or any new positions. The board does need to know and approve that. That is normal procedure. For regular job postings or anything like that, the board usually leaves that to DHHSC's discretion. And before Michelle was the executive director, and now with Viri as the executive director, the board goes directly to the executive director, and the executive director oversees the staff. Right? So the line of communication is only through the board and the executive director, not to other staff members. We know that state laws do typically say, there must be a job posting open for at least 2 weeks if it's a new job announcement, new job opening. And for example, the executive director position, I was involved with another agency in hiring 2 executive directors, and that position was open for at least 2 weeks each time. After those 2 weeks, if you have enough candidates, you can go ahead and close that position, but it is open for a 2-week minimum. That was what I learned too, and I know that the board is always learning. So there are multiple perspectives on things that happen within an agency and how we can continue to appropriately follow procedures and have the board involved as necessary. And the everyday operations or turnarounds within the agency should all be documented. And like Tim said, following the bylaws. And to provide training to the board members about the bylaws so that they are familiar and with those bylaws. And there also is a chain of command. So it's the board to the executive director, and the executive director oversees staff at the board's pleasure, right? The executive director works for the board. For regular jobs, though, that is fine to not include the board. If there is something new, though, it is common to have that, and we need to make sure that we are familiar with the bylaws and that bylaws are followed accordingly.
Hello, I'm Michelle, former executive director. I do want to add a few comments. I have noted that this is a heated conversation, and I do want to clarify, I was here with the agency until the end of June. I know a number of things are happening, but before I left, I want to clarify that the job postings can be external or internal. I did reach out to our HR agency and asked what the minimum posting would be. I was told 1 week was the minimum posting. We always check because our laws change. So finding out what the minimum is important. And then the decision can be made. The director can decide what is needed in order to efficiently run the agency. And then the director notifies the board. The everyday operations are the director's responsibility. The knowledge of the budget is something that the executive director has and needs to be able to do what they do in order for the smooth operation of the agency. The director makes those decisions and then notifies the board. When you're looking at additional funds that are outside of DSS budget, then there needs to be communication to notify where those funds are coming from, but the CDS funds remain the same, and the executive director has the authority to replace, to move around, to change those positions as is needed for the efficient operation. 5149 is indeed a fact. I have talked with DSS. I've let them know that we didn't have any qualified deaf individuals at the time, and the Office of Deaf Access said it's okay. Temporarily, you can have a hearing president until you have a deaf person. If there are not enough deaf members, you need to be engaged in an active search for more deaf members. Yes, leadership is a challenge, not just here, but throughout the community. We have a lack of young deaf leaders. As Viri mentioned, the goal is to host leadership training and classes because I established the YES program. That was my baby. And it was good for the time, but things change. Schools need change. Organizations need change. But leadership, youth leadership is definitely needed. You will not be here forever. I'm older. It's time to pass the baton. I get that. But we do want to train our new generations of leaders. And I believe that workshops are a way we can do that. It's not just here in the Valley, it's throughout the state. Many times when we ask people to volunteer, why? Am I getting paid for this? Do I get money? You mentioned benefits. What are the benefits of serving on the board? They're not just financial. Civil service volunteerism is way down. We've seen huge changes in the community at large. And I do want to clarify specifically that the budget is what we make the decisions related to serve the community. And then the executive director will inform the board.
Hello, everyone. My name is Linda McLaughlin, and I am a community member. And I am not a politician. Sorry. I just feel that the issues within this meeting should be held at a different time in order to share communities for ideas for improvement. And I feel that this should be a separate meeting. These issues should be discussed at a separate meeting. I know that many people do have concerns, but I would like to not waste time and have those other issues shared during a separate meeting. One thing is that Viriana had discussed youth services. I completely agree with the things that she shared, but where are the older community members who would be able to be involved in leading something like that, right? Hosting events or providing classes, to have a dance or art classes. It would be better if it was during the week, not on a weekend. I know that most people do prefer to spend time with their families or their children on the weekend. I would prefer it to be during the week, but why don't we have more senior events? And on Thursdays, right, Thursday afternoon is the deaf game event. It used to be an older population and not the younger population historically, until it just seems that we are not comfortable having separate ones, because we want the younger generation to be able to look up to the older generation to be able to learn from the younger generation. But to be able to grow the numbers for that, we have 24 regular attendees. And so, right, why don't we have the room and space for deaf games? Oftentimes we're kind of put in a smaller room. And I feel like we're segregated from the rest of the community, but be able to have that space for us. Also, the website. I'm just wondering how many people have access to that. If anyone knows the data on who's actually using the website. There is a lot of words and text on that. I believe that we should have more of that translated into sign language and have more blogs available. I think that would improve people accessing the website. Thank you so much for your time. We're going to do one more comment. We'll take a quick 5-minute break. After this comment, we will take a break for 5 minutes.
Hello, my name is Elvia Ramos. This is my name sign, and I am deafblind. And I lead the deafblind social group, support group. And we are still here and regularly attend DHHSC as a group and appreciate DHHSC. But I have heard of things happening, and I understand that every year change happens. However, we do need support. We have staff, we have management or supervisory staff discussing things, and I believe they need to come together to share feedback, to share ideas for improvement, whether somebody is being laid off, fired, what have you, so that communication happens amongst all of the staff. That enables the organization to continue to be operational. I do not want to see DHHSC fold. It's vital for the deafblind community. And it's important to me that when the staff have issues, that the upper administration are notified and resolutions are determined to help change things for the better. It's my hope that as we move forward, that the young deaf community can have good things. We as older deaf community will pass on, and I want to see the services and the opportunities be available for the younger generation. And there may be individuals that want to teach math and reading. There may be others that want to assist with form application and different ways in which they can support the deaf-blind individuals. Technology. The key is communication. That is number one. I just wanted to share that with all of you today. We're going to take a 5-minute break.
Okay, we're gonna go ahead and get started again. If you would like to make a comment, please line up to my right and I will call on you. If you are sitting on this side, the recording will not be able to see you. Please come in front of the camera to make your comment at this blue X. If you have anything to comment, okay?
Hello, my name is Christopher, CA. And in regards to what Michelle was sharing and the postings with the minimum of a week, I understand that. And Michelle is right. However, my concern is that in that week, you bring someone in who may not be fully qualified and experienced for that position. And maybe that is an individual that the board does not want. But if that person is hired, that could turn out to reflect negatively within the community. So maybe they could bring that person in as an acting individual, but not a permanent position. Otherwise, you could be in a position where you have to turn around and terminate someone after just hiring someone because they're not the right person in the position. So maybe bringing them in an acting or temporary capacity before making it a permanent position. But then we know it's hard to recruit people. I had one individual indicate to me that they were going to the doctor with their sister and hiring an interpreter. So there was the deaf individual, the sister, the interpreter, and a representative from DHHSC that kind of served like an interpreter. But the deaf individual was saying, no, I've got my sister, that's sufficient for me. And the advocate said, no, the sister should leave. That doesn't look good. That information gets out to the community. And I don't think that is the appropriate way to serve the deaf community. The deaf advocate or person from DHHSC does not have the authority to remove the family member from the meeting. It's important for the deaf individual to make that decision. If they prefer their family member without the representative from DHHSC, that should be respected. And I've noticed that there seems to be more and more control happening from the representatives from DHHSC. And all I can do is advise them to share or report that information to the board.
Hello, hi again, my name is Patty. And I've been serving on the board for about 5 years. This is my last month. And as you know, DHHSC does have 4 offices. We have an outreach office in Visalia. Sorry, I don't remember all the name signs of the cities. Visalia. So there's 4 different offices within the Central Valley. We also have an office in Salinas, which is where I'm from. Serves Monterey County, and as well as San Bernardino. I just wanted to say thank you to the community for allowing me to serve. I have a list of things I wanted to say, and I get nervous when I'm saying this up front. I think it was Michelle who had mentioned that we need more young people involved with the agency and in the community. And I have been a high school teacher for about 10 years. And I teach deaf and hearing students. And I have seen deaf students grow up within our education system. I have noticed that some of the younger generation is ready to get involved, and I want to encourage them to get more involved. We need more deaf role models and more deaf adults to also participate within the community. And somebody else had mentioned that as well. I had one comment from somebody in my area. There was a deaf event last night, and I asked people in our community what they would like me to share today. One person said that the meetings are in Fresno, kind of that is far. So if it would be possible that next year we provide transportation or maybe get a van to bring people to Fresno. I know the previous board membership, we had discussed multiple things at our meetings, such as having alternating locations, like having one meeting in Fresno, one in Visalia, one in Merced, one in Salinas. Maybe that would mean that the meetings were on a Saturday or something, but we could be creative. Okay, thank you. My time's up. I will get back in line if possible.
This is my last one, and after this I will shut up. I promise. I'm trying to remember who it was that talked about the executive director reporting to the board. I don't expect a response right away, but I want to ensure that the board is aware that the executive director had decided to eliminate an employee who had worked here almost 24 years. I'm not sure if the board was aware that after that employee was eliminated, that was a position was immediately posted on Facebook and social media. We wish you good luck. And I heard from all over the community. I saved those screenshots, and after 1 or 2 hours that was removed, and I simply want to state that was not proper. Again, this is Chris. And I love the bylaws. I love the bylaws. And as new board members, you're faced with the 5149 requirement. But you can table that for a temporary period of time. You can put those bylaws on hold, so to speak, until you find that you can move forward in order to meet the 5149. Hearing organizations do the same thing.
Thank you for bringing that up. During my time as board president, we were allowed to suspend part of the bylaws. How do you remember that? Or cancel or such various sections of the bylaws. The 51%, the board is able to vote to temporarily suspend that part of the bylaws for the 5149, and then able to stop that pause after the percentages are met. You guys do have the power to do that. Any other comments from the public?
I'm back. Okay. The other thing I wanted to say is, as you know, our meetings have been on Zoom. And we all truly appreciate physical presence and having meetings in person, but it is actually very challenging with members that live in outlying areas. If someone is sick, we can still meet a quorum when we meet via Zoom. Another comment that I wanted to make is people from all 4 areas, outlying areas that we are responsible for, are able to attend and take part in those meetings. And that's another benefit of the Zoom meeting. And one more thing. My concern is the immigration issue as it relates to DHHSC and ICE. There is so much happening, and I want to thank DHHSC for being actively engaged with some of my good friends, and I am looking forward to DHHSC continued involvement in other areas of need. I know here in Fresno, we recently had a workshop, and I recently chatted with Gabriel, who indicated that the staff and all of those would be involved in the trainings. They added training, had a training that the staff was a part of. I am aware that in our area there is a huge farming community, rural community, so that is important for us. Thank you so much. Hello again. I'm Justin Gaines, and I am supporting Elvia in the deafblind group, and talking about DSS individuals, support of DSP individuals for the deafblind community. We had a large number of people that were a part of that support group prior to COVID, then that died down. And we know that there are many people wearing multiple hats, teaching ASL, being involved in the ROC program, and the deafblind group has a number of goals in terms of training SSPs and ensuring that we provide workshops for SSPs, class training, braille training, tactile training. There's a whole list of things that we need to do, and we've got a number of deafblind people joining our group with various needs. So I would like to see a client support specialist designated specifically for the deafblind group. I know that is available in other areas, but as a deafblind person myself, I would like to see a client support specialist who has been specifically designated to serve the deafblind community, and not having to wear so many hats and serve so many people, because the deafblind community is growing and the need is growing as well.
Thank you, Justin, for bringing that up. Dana has been in contact with me. She's in the Bay Area, and she would like to establish a deaf-blind group, like a networking group. I can give you the contact information for Dana as she establishes that for people throughout California. Also, I am on EPIC, which is Equipment Program Accessibility Committee. It's through Northern California. It's CPUC, California Public Utilities Commission. Oh, that's a mouthful or a handful. But EPIC is responsible for equipment and access for deaf people, deaf blind people, people in wheelchairs, and things like that. So we have equipment for those who are deaf blind. If you were interested in testing some equipment, let me know, and I can get you in contact with a direct person to be able to test out different equipment that can then be tested and is disseminated throughout the community. I'm not able to test that obviously because I am not deaf blind. We want to make sure that we have people who are deaf blind who are able to test out different equipment. Please be in contact with me. I can get your information to the appropriate person and we can move from there. Okay, thank you. Hello again. This is Elvia. I have similar things to share, like Justin has shared. And there are many deaf and blind clients in the community who love participating in DHHSC events, and we want them to be connected and feel connected with the community here and with the agency. It is great, and I'm happy to see all of that participation, and I just hope that in the future, DHHSC will continue to engage with the deaf-blind community. And so far, it has been a positive experience working with the staff. We have 18 names on our list of people who have shared things with me, who are deaf-blind members. And there are some people who are not familiar in how to communicate, some staff members who are not able to, or not familiar with communicating with deaf-blind individuals, which then means that we are not having fluent, consistent communication. We're clarifying, it was 8 or 18? Okay. 18 deaf-blind community members. Yes, 18 deaf-blind community members. Also, technology, right? When we have our monthly meetings, people do come to the headquarters here in Fresno, and we're able to have our social event. We are able to interact with one another, and we also have some younger individuals who are from Merced who come to Fresno, and we have people who come from Atwater on a monthly basis. And it's great to have people come from outside of the Fresno area. It would be great to also have a communication class for a food safety certificate, to be able to have those potlucks for our events. There are several of us who are still learning tactile communication, and Justin is familiar and trained with that. Joshua Blanco and Angelica are also familiar with that, and a lot of us have not been trained yet. So we would like to be able to expand on those services and trainings, to be able to have those hosted by the agency, to have a stronger connection with the deaf-blind community, to engage the deaf community and the deaf-blind community so that we can work together as a team. There are a lot of deaf-blind people who are interested in coming to DHHSC for services and social events. Okay, that's all. Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
Hello, everyone again. I do have 2 signs that make me absolutely crazy. When a person gives a book or candy to someone else, and a person in response who is receiving that says, "Thank you," then the person says, "You're welcome," as if they are coming into your home. The correct "you're welcome" is a thank you. And this is just my pet peeve. Please stop welcoming them into your home when they say thank you. Say thank you in return, which reflects the same concept as "you're welcome." Also, the sign for culture. We have used the sign for culture with the C for years. I would like to see that same. I am not crazy about the sign that looks like a flower that is disappearing or something is passing away. We are not.
Okay, any other comments from the community? We still have time. We have 25 more minutes allotted for community comments. Any other comments?
Chris back. I want to ask for some feedback from those of you that are here. I have a son who is a doctor. He works as an emergency room doctor at St. Agnes, and he also goes to Delano and Bakersfield. Specifically, I want to address interpreting. My son is fluent in ASL. His first language is ASL. The first few years of his life, he did not talk. My wife spoke Spanish. I signed. We both signed. He did not speak. When we took him to school, the teacher asked whether or not he was deaf. I said, no, he is able to hear, but he grew up with an understanding and a natural acquisition of American Sign Language. I have a second son who is a police officer and in charge of a large area, and both sons have approached me with this question. And that is what I want to present to you. If I am just a deaf member of the community and I go into the hospital and request a sign language interpreter, as a deaf individual, that is my right. However, if there is a doctor, not necessarily my son, who is fluent in ASL, and the deaf person says, no, I do not want to communicate with you, I prefer to bring in a interpreter, that quota doctor feels offended. That quota doctor feels offended. Now, that's all good and well, but oftentimes the sign language interpreter doesn't understand all of the medical vocabulary. My son is very familiar with ASL and with medical vocabulary. So as the deaf patient continues to have problems, whose fault is that? My response is that is the deaf person's fault, but it is the deaf person's right to do what they choose to do, whether it's to bring in an interpreter or have a skilled officer or a skilled doctor communicate directly with them. As an interpreter, if I walk into a situation where the doctor is fluent and the patient is clearly communicating effectively, they can remain silent as opposed to just automatically coming in and interpreting. So both of my sons have expressed disappointment in this situation. I completely understand because the deaf people in this community have a variety of skill levels in terms of their language. And so, as it appears now, both of them have continued to pursue serving the hearing community, but they could be of great service to the deaf community. And on their own time, they have served the deaf community, offering advice that the deaf individual has chosen not to listen to. So I'm just hoping that as community members, you will share that with interpreters. If you see that a doctor or an officer is fluent in sign and their communication is effective, be content to simply go in and monitor this situation. But that is something that I don't see happening. I'm doing some research. I believe there's the Daily Moth. They're doing a conversation with the Dr. Ivy. Maybe you're familiar with him. He makes blogs on the Daily Moth, and they're posted frequently on Facebook. He is a CODA from Texas and a medical doctor, but fluent in signs. And I asked my son to watch his communication, and his signing style is very soft, whereas my son's signing style is much like mine. So it is my hope that with the years ahead that doctors will grow in their ability to communicate with various levels of communication within the deaf community.
Excuse me. Okay. He had asked for feedback. Does anybody have any feedback they would like to share with him? Or response to his comment?
Share my personal.
I'm just going to go ahead and share my personal opinion. The fact that your son is a doctor is very exciting. I'm so happy. And I was thinking about the only thing that I could think of is depending on the person, right? And I wouldn't say placing blame. I think we need to stop using that word. But if the person needs potentially a CDI, or if a person, let's suppose that a doctor is fluent in sign language, let's pretend, right, that the physician is fluent in sign language and the patient needs a CDI. Maybe you would be able to always meet everyone's needs, even if you are fluent. But I think most of the time, a signing doctor would be fabulous. Okay, I wanted to just take a moment and respond to some of the comments made this afternoon in regards to seeing more vlogs and less English text on the website. DHHSC does have a commitment to making sure that it is a goal of ours to include more videos with the ASL translation to make them more visual for the deaf community. So thank you for that as we continue to make those necessary adjustments. There's always room for improvement. Also, for the deafblind support group, we used to have workshops and we haven't lately, but thank you so much. I've had less lately, so thank you so much for that. In regards to LGBT communities, senior groups, youth groups, all of that, we had mentioned that earlier. I did have a list of things. I think I forgot to mention some of those, but yes, we do have the deafblind support group, and that is something we can definitely address. For the deaf game socials, maybe if we just had one instead of separate groups. I have noticed that it is growing, which makes me very happy because a lot of deaf people are isolated, and I have seen how much this has impacted the community. Even before working in the position of EDD, I would work with deaf and hard of hearing clients, and I would say that they love blocking off that time Thursdays 1 to 4 to go to game day, which I completely understand. I know it's a very important part of engagement for the deaf community, networking, socialization, all of that. And so we can address that in terms of opening the room up for one large group. Also, someone had shared about a staff member who had taken over the an appointment. It's unfortunate to hear that happen. I am not aware, but if I know more details, I can address and improve those. There are grievance forms available. It's important for us to know if that person did not have a positive experience. It's important for us to know, so please encourage them to fill out a grievance form. Also, having the request for a specific CSS for deaf blind individuals. Of course, we wish we could have a CSS assigned to each specific community's needs, but that is why we are currently doing cross-training, so that it's just not one person who is familiar with the deaf-blind community, that we have somebody who also is available if that one person is not available. That is our vision behind the cross-training, just so that we have everyone trained to meet all the community's needs. This is the definition for asking for clarification. You said the one that was talking about the one whose sister, the interpreter had said, or the staff member had said that the interpreter didn't have to be there and the staff member was going to be involved.
One moment.
The one where the staff member had asked the sister of the deaf person to leave, that the staff member would then be able to support in that appointment. There is a grievance form that can be submitted for feedback for that staff member. Also, in terms of transparency with the executive director and the board, if you ask the board member what is happening within the operations of DHHSC, it has been brought up, and I believe that I did adhere to the appropriate protocols in order to make that happen. I did follow all of the appropriate procedures for those positions. Okay, thank you.
Vera, you had mentioned the complaint or grievance form, and we did do some updates and modification to that form. It's a grievance form that can be completed. Michelle had reviewed that, however, we broadened and made some revisions where that can be directed to the executive director if it's a staff member. It can also go to the board if needed. And if a community member wants to file a grievance, so specific grievances can go to specific individuals. Staff grievances would go to the executive director. Board grievances would go to the president. Community grievances would go to the board president, who in turn would share those with the board, depending on whether or not there's been a request to keep that confidential. So those 3 grievance forms are all online in PDF format. Those are forms that can be completed and submitted on the DHHSC website. And that I'm being told by someone that is there. Alex is indicating those forms are available online. So if there is a grievance you would like to file, that is available for you.
Okay, any other comments? We have less than 15 minutes left. Anybody else have a comment to share? Seeing nobody approaching the front, we will go ahead and now open it up for meet the new executive director. We have the room scheduled and this event scheduled till 4 o'clock. Thank you so much for your time. Also, just letting you know, the board really does appreciate all of your comments. We will be reviewing them and discussing them as a board. All right. Thank you so much for all of your time. I really appreciate it.